Welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be a project vlog. Essentially, I'm filming this video because I am going to unravel this sweater and hopefully reknit it into something that I like better and will wear more often. There is a backstory to this yarn. This is the Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo. And I purchased it when I went on a trip to Japan for my birthday back in 2024. It's my 30th birthday. So I bought a bunch of yarn. At the time I didn't have a project in mind. I was just in love with the yarn, and I had worked with Noro once before, and I was just really obsessed with the kind of variegated colors. So I bought a bunch of yarn. I didn't have anything really in mind. I tried knitting up the terrazzo sweater. I'll probably be inserting photos so you can see the life cycle of this sweater. But I tried knitting up the terrazzo sweater single-stranded. I didn't meet gauge. It was too small. Long story short, I had to unravel. I knitted it up again with a brush alpaca. Gauge was right. Fit was right. The alpaca really muted the color, so I wasn't in love with that. Unraveled it again. Then I came up with this here. This is a version of the sweater number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So I had knit that once before, and so I already had that pattern in my library. So I thought to myself, I'll just reknit it again with this pattern, make it a little bit different than my other version, make it a short collar neckline versus the funnel neck. I cropped it quite a bit, as well as I added, or like I continued the double, I don't even know what you call this, but the pattern on the raglan, I continued it down the sides as well. I don't know if you can see that. Getting to the issues with this sweater, I really love the color. It's a shame how infrequently that I wear it. I don't really know what it is, and I think that now that I've knit more different types of patterns, I don't love a raglan on me. I think I like a raglan if it's quite oversized, which my first cardigan number 9 was. Like, I wear that sweater all the time. Recent knitting patterns that I've made, I'll insert some photos here as well. They've been drop shoulder designs, and even previously some of my earlier drop shoulders that I've made, I get a lot more wear out of them. And I feel like I just like that fit a little bit better. I did end up making the terrazzo sweater. I knit it with a different combination of yarn, but that one has kind of like a saddle shoulder as well, which I feel fits my shoulders better than a raglan. I don't know if I have broad shoulders or what. I don't know. I don't really have a good explanation for it, but I just like a drop shoulder better. Another thing is the neckline. So this is it with some elastic thread inside the neckline, and it holds it up pretty well, I would say, but just as like a sensory thing, I feel like I can feel the elastic against my neck because I had to tie it kind of tight to hold it together. Otherwise, the neck almost looked, it was like farther out and it looked quite square actually. So I guess that's another thing with my other version being the high neck. I didn't really notice that because it was like all the way up to a funnel neck. So I didn't notice that the neckline was so wide, which I do notice with it being a short neck. And the last thing and the main thing why I'm going to reknit it is because I think I made it too short. If I reach my arms up at all, it like completely lifts up. And so I thought about this sweater, and then I don't wear it that often. And I thought that I could do some sweater surgery to add some length to the body. I did do sweater surgery already on this sweater to lengthen the sleeves, because the first time that I made it, the sleeves were a little bit too short. So this sweater has lived many lives. But in thinking about that and thinking about all the effort it would take to put in a lifeline, cut the thread, knit some more, graft it together, I thought, do I even really like this overall sweater? I think the main thing that I like about it is the color. Like, I like the fabric. And that's pretty much all that I like about this sweater. I don't really love the shape of it. I don't know. I like other knits in my closet a lot better, and the length was the main thing. But anyway, another thing to mention, I made this in a raglan construction because I wanted this colorway to be continuous all around the sweater. I didn't want the striping to be different depending on the circumference. So for instance, I did knit a Noro cardigan before. With that one, the striping was a lot more prominent. So on the front plackets where the width is only this long, the stripes were longer, and then when I joined everything in the body, the stripes were a lot smaller and closer together. But I wanted this one to be kind of like cohesive. So that's one of the main reasons that I went for a raglan design. However, since knitting it up, I kind of found that the striping doesn't look that different depending on the circumference. Like if you look at the sleeves versus the body, it all kind of looks the same. I feel like if I made this into a drop shoulder design, which typically you would knit the back, knit the front, knit it down, join under the arms, and then knit it in the round. So just based on the fact that, I mean, the striping looks pretty much identical right at the cuffs versus like the full across the chest body, that I think it would still look pretty cohesive even if I didn't knit a drop shoulder. And I do wear my cardigan number 9, and that's one of my most worn knits, so clearly that striping pattern variation doesn't bother me that much. I wanted to get on here wearing it before the sweater is no longer. So this is a last view of this sweater. Now thinking of what to knit in replacement, there's one pattern that I came across it and I fell in love with the pattern. I didn't have any yarn in that weight. It's a DK weight pattern. I didn't have any yarn in that weight, and I thought about buying more yarn to knit it, and then I think with this yarn it would look really good in this pattern. So let me just tell you. So the one that I'm planning on knitting is the Wanaka sweater by Andy Knits. So this one is a polo neck, polo Henley neck. What made me fall in love with this pattern is the details. I really like the double knitting on the button band, as well as it looks like there's just even the decreases around how it's shaped for the neckline just looks really nice. I think for a pattern like that that's very masculine almost, it kind of reminds me of like collegiate preppy vibe. I feel like that would look really cool with a very colorful, feminine, rainbow dainty, speckled yarn. And spoiler, I have already cast it on, so let me go grab it. So I had some yarn left over after knitting this project, so I decided to start casting on with my excess yarn first, just to see if I even liked how the stripes were coming up with this pattern before completely unraveling this one. I had about half a skein left. I just did a bit of the back panel just to kind of see what it would look like, and honestly, like I said, it's looking pretty similar. I would say that the colors look a little bit brighter even, but like, I feel like it looks a little bit brighter, but kind of the striping motif still looks pretty similar. I just put these stitches on hold for the back and cast on the front because I really wanted to see that whether having this narrow circumference would look drastically different than the back. Not circumference, diameter, you know what I'm saying. There are short rows worked along the back panel, and then you do work some short rows on the front as well, and then you do some increases to shape the neckline. Again, I'm pretty happy with how the colors are coming up. I looked through the project page on Ravelry, and everyone so far has made it in solid colors, so I didn't really have anyone to like reference that did like a striped, self-striping or variegated yarn just to kind of see. That is how it is looking so far, which I am pretty hyped about. And I think that doing this pattern will also be more true to the composition of this yarn. There's quite a bit of silk, so I think that this lends more to like, as also with the color, it kind of lends more to a spring, summer night, early fall, I would say, kind of knit. That was another thing as to why I didn't wear it as often, is because it wasn't super warm. So, and because it was so cropped too, that in the winter time I wasn't really reaching for it. I would reach for my other thicker sweaters. I guess it's just coming into spring now, so I haven't had a spring season to wear it. But I think that I'll get more use out of it with having that open button down, so that it'd be more airy. If it's getting hot, I can unbutton it, let some air in. But I just wanted to pop on, like I said, before I start to unravel. I think that I will just check in maybe after I finish each section, and then I'll do like an overview at the end, and we will see if it was worth it. I will mention, I do have this ball here that's caked up, mixed with the brushed alpaca, just because once I finished knitting this version of the sweater, I had a bunch left over, and so I actually paired it with Drops brushed alpaca silk, and I knit up the Korshaven vest, and then I still had this left over. So I do have the option of trying to separate this from the mohair. I've tried to separate yarn from mohair once before, and while it was doable, it was very labor intensive and frustrating, and I had to cut the yarn a few times. I'm trying to avoid that. Hopefully I'll just unravel this and I'll have enough. Fingers crossed. Worst case scenario, if I use this all up and still need more yarn, then I'll go to this, but I won't do it unless I have to. First things first, I'm going to have to unpick the tubular bind off. We'll see how hard that is to do. I may resort to cutting it, but I do want to salvage as much yarn as I possibly can. So I'm just going to try to look and see where I wove in the ends, and then we'll start from there. Done about this much, which is almost half. And I haven't had to cut the yarn yet, so I think that I should be okay. I tried to unwind it and I was getting quite a bit of snags. I'll just show here, this yarn is very fluffy, and like even like here you can see that these two rings are stuck together. And I think that's because of the mohair content in there. So I did have to yank apart, and I did even have to get the scissors out to cut apart some of those like wispies that were knotted together. Done the first initial round, so hopefully from now it should unravel easier. So let's see. Okay, I was worried there for a second, but I think it's going easier now. I was able to unravel the sweater. longest unpicking the tubular bind off. And then that first row, I think because when you're threading through to do the sewn bind off, there's a lot of friction. Also, I decided to flip the sweater inside out and unpick all of the ends that I wove in so that I could just like crank it on my yarn winder to unravel it. So that was easier to do beforehand than to wind it and then come up on a woven end and then have to figure it out then. I have a few bigger skeins, but then I have lots of like little small bits. I'm just knitting from the noodly state, and I figure that if I block everything in the end, that'll be fine. This is how it is knitting up right now. Like I mentioned before, I put the back on hold to start knitting the front before I reached the full length at the back. So I'm gonna try to use up these smaller balls on the rest of the back, just so that if the color change is a little bit weird between them, then it's less noticeable than on the front. So I finished doing the front plackets and connected it under the arms. I've only done like a couple centimeters. This is how it's looking so far. So obviously it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical on the left versus the right, but I feel like it still looks quite cohesive. And with the back there as well. I think I actually like that it's a little bit different on each side. I was worried a little bit about the width. I am doing the smallest size, but I think that it should be a decent amount of positive ease. So I think it'll still have that kind of airy, summery vibe, as well as I think the arm opening is low enough, which is always a concern because I don't like tight sleeves. I think that I'm going to do the neckline next, just so that I can have a better idea of what it's going to look like. And I always find that doing the neckline like as soon as I possibly can just helps make it look more polished, almost motivation to work on the rest of the sweater. Although I have no lack of that with this one. I'm actually having to force myself to finish some of the other whips that I already have, so I can get those as finished objects before I put my attention on knitting this one solely. It's only been a couple days since I first did this, so it is working up quite quickly. The way that the button band is knit up is using double knitting, and that's something that I haven't done before, so I might have to watch a couple of videos and see how that's done. I've done double knitting only for my cardigan number 9 for the neckline. You do a couple rows of double knitting before you knit the collar, just to give it more structure. So I've done double knitting in that sense, or like when you do the rows of double knitting before you do a tubular bind off, but I've never done a button band. So I will be curious to see how that turns out. But just checking in, this is where we're at, and I will see you once the neckline is done. The double knitting was pretty simple. It did have pretty good instructions in the pattern if you haven't done double knitting before. I did watch a video just to confirm that my interpretation is what it's actually supposed to be. And also, the pattern says to use 3mm needles, but I have the Chow set here, and it only has 2.75 and 3.25. So I ended up sizing down to the 2.75mm needles, just because I think generally on the scale of tight to loose knitters, I would say I'm looser. So I think it would be better to size down than to size up and have it be too loose. So it's the evening time now, so the lighting is probably off and washed out, but that is what it's looking like. The double knitting turned out really nice. It was my first time doing the double knitting, as well as this double folded collar. I was worried that the collar would be too small, but then once everything worked up, it looks like it sits fine. I'm at a point with the sleeve where I'm wondering whether this yoke depth is too short. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm just gonna keep knitting it for now, and if anything, I think I'll just have to stretch this open a little bit with blocking, just because I have a finite amount of yarn. I'm knitting the smallest size currently, which is the extra small, and I think with it being meant to be more of a summer type of design, if I block it out and if the fabric is a little bit gappy or airy, then that would be fine. So that is how that is looking. It is many months later since I filmed the last update. A lot has happened. I've moved, life events. This is the finished Wanaka sweater. I think it turned out perfect. I did decide on doing these kind of iridescent pearl shell type buttons. And I'll just show what it looks like all fully buttoned up. I have to say that I have no notes on this pattern. It was really beautifully written. I think that, like, sizing wise, it turned out perfect. I was a little bit worried about the yoke depth and the arms, but honestly, once I finished blocking it, it turned out fine. And I also feel like, even though this is a drop shoulder construction, the striping pattern does look pretty consistent all throughout. I'll just show a little bit of the back. It is a cloudy day outside right now, so the lighting may not be the best, but I'll try to just come up so you can see the colors specifically, and then maybe I'll insert photos that show it a little bit better. There was one point when knitting this when I was playing Yarn Chicken. So I had knit up the sleeves and then I put them on try-on tubing before actually binding off for the tubular bind off. And I knit the body basically as long as I possibly could. And then went back and bound off the sleeves just in case I had to unravel a little bit to make the body. because I wanted to have the body length be the priority. So you can see where that comes to. So that's just my waist there. So it's a little bit cropped, but not significantly. I do highly recommend this pattern. I learned a lot of new techniques like the double knitted band, and as well as how to make buttonholes without cutting the yarn for the double knitted button band. And I just think that all of the finishings on this are super clean, look super professional. Like this looks like a garment that you would buy in a store, like kind of like preppy, but obviously the colorway is something that you could only get from a custom hand knit. I have been wearing this a lot for like summer evenings, and then I imagine going into fall as the days are a little bit cooler, like today that's kind of cloudy and rainy and gloomy. This is the perfect weather for this type of garment, and I like that you have the option of kind of opening it up and venting it out if it gets a little bit warmer. Overall, I have no regrets. I'm glad that I unraveled the previous sweater. I feel like the fit of this one I like much better, as well as the details kind of add a little bit more interest. Let this be your reminder that if you're thinking about unraveling something, or if there's just something about a garment that you've knit that's preventing you from wearing it, unravel it, reknit it. You're probably not going to regret it. I think that's all I have to say for this episode. So feel free to like and subscribe if you like this content. Leave a comment below on whether you are pro unraveling knit projects, and maybe write an example of something that you've unraveled and reknit, and maybe it'll encourage other people reading through the comments as well to get that push that they need to unravel something that's been laying dormant in their closet. So yeah, I will see you next time.